Who would have thought that a film series about so-called despicable characters would end up being so popular? Since the franchise began in 2010, Despicable Me has taken the world by storm. With 2 sequels, a spin-off series, several shorts, and a ton of merch, the Despicable Me universe has certainly made a name for itself. But out of all these heroes and villains, which are the most noble and which ones are truly despicable? Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and this is Despicable Me, Good to Evil. As always, we'll be starting out our list with the most pure characters and working our way down. These characters are the good. Starting this list, we have the innocent and adorable Agnes. As far as little kid characters go, she's one of the sweetest as well as one of the most pure. When she first meets Gru, Agnes immediately forms an attachment to him, trusting him despite her sister still having doubts.
Got your leg, I got your leg.
She also trusts the minions and treats them well, telling them thank you after they get her a homemade unicorn toy. Though she doesn't grow or develop much over the course of the film series, it could be argued that she doesn't really need to. While she is naive about some things like the existence of unicorns, Agnes is mature about other things. In the second movie, when Gru dressed up as a fairy princess for her birthday, she let him know that while she knew it was him, she still appreciated his efforts. Then, in the third movie, after learning that Gru and Lucy had lost their jobs, Agnes was willing to sell her beloved unicorn plushie just to help the family raise money.
I just wanted to help since you don't have a job.
While she hasn't done as much in the way of heroic deeds compared to other characters, we can't deny that she has a pure heart and deserves the gold medal of good. In second place, we have Lucy, the super spy extraordinaire and eventual wife and mother to Gru and the girls. Lucy's tough but quirky. She's excitable when it comes to her job, but she's also caring and kind. When she sees that Gru is on an awful date and is about to be humiliated, she tranquilizes his date.
Oh, she's just,
Maybe not the best response, but hey, Gru appreciated it. As a member of the Anti-Villain League, she's on the side of good, even convincing Gru to join AVL with her and fight off other villains. She also helps Gru open up, being a good listener as well as supportive. Lucy also tries her best to be a good mother to the girls, and although she makes mistakes, like forcing Margot to dance with a boy, and accidentally getting her engaged, she always tries to correct these mistakes and will not hesitate to stand up for her girls and protect them from danger.
you mess with Margot, you mess with me and I.
As far as the heroes of this series go, we feel there's no one more heroic than Lucy. Following her, we have Margot. Out of the 3 sisters, Margot was the most skeptical of Gru and would often push him into doing what she and her sisters wanted, being snarky when he tried to tell her the rules of the house and refusing to do his cookie scheme until he took them to their dance class. But after Gru rescued them from Vector and proved that he could be a good dad, Margot came around. She can be the most mature and level-headed out of her sisters, but given that she's still a preteen, she has her moments of immaturity. She's protective of her younger sisters, often leading them out of trouble, and caring about them and their parents. Next, we have the last of the sisters, Edith. Definitely the most mischievous and spunky of the 3. In fact, out of all the girls, she's the most likely to follow her father's villainous footsteps. In the first movie, after Gru destroys the carnival game, Agnes wants him to destroy other games just for fun. And in the second film, she's actively training to be a ninja, and Gru has to remind her not to kill anyone. That was probably meant as a joke, but still. Like Margot, she can be bratty and snarky. She plays pranks on Dru's butler and likes to tease and scare her sisters, but thankfully it never gets to the point of her bullying them. In fact, when Agnes finds a one-horned goat in the third movie and believes that it's a unicorn, Edith decides to let her believe that, not wanting to burst her bubble.
Yeah, I'll let someone else burst her bubble.
While her tendency to enjoy violence and her father's weapons is a bit concerning, she only ever fights for her family, which definitely makes her a good guy in our eyes. Finishing up the main family, we have Gru, probably the character in the series with the most complicated morality scale, because you can make a case for him to be placed in any of our categories. He happily starts out as a villain, and has been a villain since he was 8, after stealing an already stolen crown from Scarlet Overkill. Since then, he's tried to make a name for himself as a villain, stealing landmarks from Vegas and New York, and eventually trying to steal the moon. He also casually does evil in his day-to-day life, like freezing people just to make things more convenient for himself when he gets coffee. Although he treats his minions decently, Gru tended to use people for his own means, like when he was willing to adopt a trio of little girls just to use as pawns for a scheme.
The plan will work with two.
This is all awful, but throughout the series, we see Gru develop and grow as both a character and a father. Once he starts to care about his daughters, Gru not only protects them from harm, but does everything a good father should do, from playing with them and making them personalized breakfast, to comforting and encouraging them when they're sad. Gru's even willing to stop being a villain for his daughter's sake, and later, fully joins the Anti-Villain League. So far, he's managed to defeat 3 villains. Not bad for a former baddie. As much good as he's done, and as much love he has for his family, Gru still does morally ambiguous things. He can still be a jerk and rude towards strangers or people he doesn't care about. Even so, he refused to return to villainy in the 3rd movie. Not out of any moral reason, but because he didn't want his family to get caught up in that dangerous lifestyle.
I left that life behind me. End of story.
Gru has changed a ton, and while he may not be the most pure or heroic guy, he's still a good dad and husband who's trying his best not to be so despicable these days. Wrapping up the good, next is Silas Ramsbottom. Silas is the head of the Anti-Villain League, an organization that primarily focuses on stopping supervillains from causing mass devastation. That's a pretty heroic thing. But how is Silas as a person? While the work he does is good, Silas is condescending and a pompous jerk. He makes fun of Guru's jam and jellies business, and when he tells Gru that Lucy is being reassigned to Australia, he does it in a harsh and cold way.
Poodle pip and cheerio, Mr. Gru.
Granted, Silas probably didn't know about Gru's feelings for Lucy yet. What keeps Silas out of the gray is that he only ever acts this way towards Gru, which, given Gru's history, is understandable. However, we never see him act this way towards Lucy or any of the other AVL agents. While we may not see him out in the field stopping villains, running an agency is nothing to sneeze at. So we feel he does good enough to rank in the good. That does it for the good guys. Now it's time to delve into the more neutral. This is the gray area. Starting off this section, we have Drew in a spot that we're sure would disappoint him. Drew is a wannabe villain. Having grown up with their villainous father, all Drew wants is to be great like his father was. Unfortunately, when it comes to pulling off evil schemes, he's too dopey to be a real threat. When he and Gru start to bond, he tricks Gru into stealing a diamond for evil's sake, instead of returning it, and tries to push his brother into being evil again, despite Gru's insisting that he doesn't want to.
No way, we can't give the diamond back.
Because of this, they fell out for a little bit. Thankfully, Drew steps up when his brother and nieces are in danger, and he destroys Balthazar Brat's giant robot to save Gru. Although he still insists on being a supervillain in the end, he and Gru are friendly with each other despite now being on opposite sides, viewing the whole thing as a cat and mouse game rather than anything serious.
We'll give him a 5-minute head start.
Because of his happy-go-lucky nature and his lack of success when it comes to actual villainy, we're tentatively putting him in the gray and are hopeful that, even as a technical villain, he can remain a decent guy. Next, we're ranking all the minions. We know that there have been several named minions, with 3 of them even taking a starring role in the spinoff movie. While some may be more innocent and bratty, they all have similar personalities and motives that we feel should group them together. The minions are minions. All they want is to serve the most evil person they can find and help them cause destruction. Unfortunately, they have a bad habit of accidentally killing their masters, with Scarlet and Gru being the only ones to survive. Funny enough, Gru has also brought out their good side.
It was your cousin's idea.
What?
Towards Gru and the girls, the minions are kind and protective. They want to help them and make them happy. Still, these guys can be chaotic and destructive. And unlike Gru, who has firmly turned his back on evil, the minions miss doing evil and briefly leave him because of this desire in the 3rd movie. The minions are childlike and easily do good or evil depending on their mood or the person they're trying to save or defeat. We can't call them villains. As far as we're concerned, these guys are practically the definition of chaotic neutral. Keeping in line with Gru's henchmen, we have Dr. Nefario. Like the minions, Dr. Nefario is more focused on evil than Gru is. Unlike the minions, who soften up to the girls, Nefario only saw them as a nuisance. When he thought that Gru was getting too attached and was better off without them, he called the orphanage to take the girls away.
I did it for your own good.
While he helped Gru get them back and now considers the girls part of the family, he never apologized for this. In the second movie, he quits working for Gru, again feeling unsatisfied in his work and frustrated that Gru now cares more about being a father than a villain. He teams up with El Macho and agrees to help him take over the world by creating a serum that makes the minions go rabid. Thankfully, Nefario once again realizes his mistake and creates an antidote for the serum, helping the Gru family save the day.
Nobody messes with my family.
Although it's clear that he cares about Gru and tries to stand by him and make things right, that doesn't excuse all the wrong that he's done. We can't put him in the bad tier since he could be more heartless, but we feel that he's still far from being a good guy. In what may be an unconventional pick, we're ranking the Nelsons next.
Okay, Nelsons, let's do this.
In the Minions spin-off movie, the Nelsons pick up the Minions when they're trying to hitchhike to VillainCon. Being a family of villains, the Nelsons do fun family activities, like robbing banks and getting into car chases with police, shooting missiles at them. As self-proclaimed villains, what keeps them from being in the bad tier? Similar to Gru, though they do bad things, they're a loving family and care about each other, like when Mr. and Mrs. Nelson comfort their daughter Tina for accidentally tripping the alarm during a robbery instead of scolding her.
Mistake, Sugar Plum. You're still learning.
The Nelsons are also kind to the minions, not only offering them a ride, but also fresh apple slices. And when Scarlet orders to capture the minions, they're the only villains that don't go after them. The dad even tells the minions to run for it. We still can't call them good characters because they commit crimes. But when compared to other villains on this list, ones who are truly heartless, they're definitely the best of the bad. On the very edge of gray, we're placing Herb Overkill, husband to Scarlet Overkill. While Scarlet is the one committing the crimes, Herb is the accomplice and inventor, providing his wife and the minions with all the gadgets. Herb is a loving and doting husband.
This baby shoots actual lava.
Never jealous of her success and always supporting her and telling her how much he admires her. He's also friendly with the minions, and when he's ordered to torture them, he plays around with them. While it can be said that he enables Scarlet's evil deeds and the inventions he creates are destructive in the wrong hands, Herb is too nice of a guy to be labeled as bad. Dude is always laid back and chill.
It was me, Herb, the whole time.
Finally, we've come to the truly villainous and the wicked. These characters are the bad to evil. We have to put Marlena, Gru's mother, on the lower end of bad. Compared to Gru and Lucy, Marlena was an awful parent. At best, she was harsh, and at worst, she was emotionally abusive.
And you told me that dad died of disappointment when I was born.
Marlena never supported or encouraged Gru, always criticizing him and making Gru feel like he had to impress her. When Gru is all grown up, her attitude towards him never changes. She's either criticizing and vaguely insulting him or ignoring him to spend time with her various exercise instructors. For his whole life, she never told him that he had a twin brother. What keeps her from being put any lower is that while she wasn't that great of a parent, she is a decent grandmother, though it was only one scene with the girls. She also told Gru at the end of the first movie that he was a good parent, though not as good as her. It's not much, but it's something.
You've turned out to be a great parent. Just like me. Maybe even better.
Next is Miss Hattie, head of the orphanage. Like with Marlena, what's keeping her from the top is not anything good, but rather everyone else on this list is somehow much worse. Miss Hattie rules her orphanage with an iron fist. She's cruel, condescending, bossy, and is constantly reminding the girls that she doesn't even like children, only seeing the orphans she takes care of as a means to sell her cookies. When they don't sell enough cookies, she sticks them in a box of shame. She also taunts the girls hoping for an adopted family. When Agnes asks if anyone's come in to adopt them, Miss Hattie tells her no in the harshest way possible.
Let me think. No.
This woman isn't nice, and what makes her frustrating is that she never gets punished for being an awful person. While we wish we could put her higher up, we must acknowledge that although Miss Hattie isn't winning any humanitarian award, at least she's never tried to kill people or take over the world. We're ranking El Macho next. Thought to be dead after going out in the most manly way possible, El Macho has both brains and brawn and has been called a complete powerhouse of a man. He faked his death and went undercover as a restaurant owner, just so he can plan his biggest scheme yet, taking over the world with rabid minions, and was even smart enough to frame another person in the mall when he suspected the anti-villain league was on his tail. In his youth, he'd frequently rob armored trucks, being strong enough to easily lift them, and focused on being as manly and macho as possible. Despite all this, El Macho is a decent guy. As a civilian, he's friendly towards Gru and his daughters, consoled Gru when he was sad about Lucy leaving, and is an alright father to his son, supporting his and Margot's relationship.
Young love is beautiful, no?
He also loves his pet chicken. Unfortunately, most of this goodwill goes out the window when he sicks his rabid minions on Gru after Gru refuses his offer to help him take over the world and ties Lucy to a rocket that's set to go into a volcano. It goes to show that even a nice villain is still a villain at heart. Up next is the villainous Vector. He's nerdy and immature, priding himself on being a so-called modern villain, thanks to his extraordinary tech. He loves to show off, like stealing the Pyramid of Giza and bragging about it. He's also not afraid to steal ideas from other villains like Gru, making him more petty.
Pretty impressive.
This extends to strangers, given that he was willing to vaporize the girls for trespassing when all they were trying to do was sell cookies. What makes him cross the line from annoying antagonist to threat is when he kidnaps the girls in exchange for the shrunken moon. He then refuses to return the girls and nearly causes Margot to fall to her death. Unlike El Macho, he isn't good at all. However, he's dumb and oblivious, and not as threatening as our next two entries. In second place, we have Balthazar Brat. Balthazar started out as a former child star. He played a child villain in a very popular 80s show called Evil Brat. But when he hit puberty and was no longer cute and charming, he became a has-been at 15.
What are you looking at?
So to get revenge on the world and fans that turned against him, Brat became a real supervillain. Surprisingly, Balthazar was pretty good at being a villain, becoming the AVL's most wanted. Using his 80s-themed gadgets, he takes out all the security on a yacht, outsmart and humiliate Gru, and steal an extremely valuable diamond, with the implication that this is about on par with all of his other schemes and grand escapes. Despite his goofy appearance, Balthazar rivals nearly every other villain in the franchise in terms of danger and threat levels. Later on, after Gru and Drew steal his diamond, Balthazar tops himself by not only kidnapping the girls, but unleashing a giant robot to terrorize Hollywood before lifting it into space. Yeah, this dude's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. He also nearly kills Gru and Drew, and is only defeated when one of his weapons is used against him. Balthazar easily could have been named our most evil character.
I've been a bad boy!
However, despite all of his success, we feel that his bratty personality and petty motivations make him just a tiny bit less evil and impressive than our number one pick. We're giving Scarlet Overkill our gold medal of evil. One of the greats, Scarlet was nearly the queen of villainy, if not for the minions and later a young Gru, taking her out once and for all. Being known as the world's number one villain, her talent for evil is obvious, with her having started a criminal empire at 13. Though she can put on a nice and sweet facade, Scarlet is ambitious and will do whatever it takes to reach her goals. This includes stealing, taking hostages, and attempted murder. She also hates to be shown up. Although the minions technically did what she asked of them, stealing the queen's crown, the fact that Bob was made ruler and stole her glory was enough to infuriate her and make her want to see the trio of minions tortured and killed.
You stole my dream.
Even before this, she implied that her kindness towards the minions was conditional, and if they did anything wrong or stupid, she would blow them off the face of the earth. Like El Macho, Scarlet has one good quality. She has someone she cares about unconditionally, her husband Herb. Even with the small hint of goodness, after looking at all the success Scarlet has had as a villain, how much destruction she caused in her life, and all the danger she put the minions through, we just have to rank Scarlet Overkill as the most evil character in the Despicable Me franchise. But who do you think are the most good and evil characters? Let us know in the comment section below. Be sure to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.